it'll do it. There we go. So I told you that's what it would do. Hey everybody, it's Ted with the Ted Show. It's episode 25. I can't believe it. There's my friends over there, Carson, Linda, and my guest today. And let me know if you guys can hear us. Maybe you can let me know as soon as you can if you can hear me and hear Jose. Jose, you go ahead and try to talk. Let me know if people can hear.
Hello everyone. I just want to do a quick check to make sure you guys can hear my voice.
He's pretty good. Look, that sounded good. That sounded good. All right, so I'm bringing it up. And so Jose was kind enough to come on a Monday. He's had a crazy day like I think we all have. There, we're up. All right. Dorothy and Ricardo are on. All right, thank you guys. Hey, Michelle, thank you for telling me you can hear me. Appreciate it. So he came on a Monday. He had to pick his daughter up. He got here like 6 minutes ago, and we were trying not to stress out because I told him with our $4.99 budget, we are good to go. There is no problem here, especially you coming on a Monday, which I appreciate. So Jose and I'm trying to think of how we met. Did I reach out to you initially because I saw all of your posts, or how did that work?
We met here.
We did, right? Did I invite you here, or did we meet at the club?
I was invited by Rick Garcia.
That's right.
He did the warm introduction almost a year ago.
Has it been that long?
Yeah.
Wow.
And from there, our relationship has just kind of spiraled.
Well, you've created a whole business which we want to talk about, and you're already doing amazing things in the community. And his beautiful wife Danielle's not with us, but I know she's a driving force behind all of that. So talk a little bit about you. So you're a veteran, and I love veterans. You know that. I have a soft heart for anything that's veteran related. Right. So tell them a little bit about your service and how you eventually got out, and we'll go from there with the business.
Sure, absolutely. I was part of the initial invasion into Iraq in 2003. I enlisted right after high school. 19-year-old kid, decided to choose field artillery, combat arms, wanted to get my hands dirty. Being a native New Yorker, September 11th really impacted me. I was born in Manhattan, so I took that with me to basic training and ultimately to combat.
I've seen some of those pictures. You look like I try not to swear too much on the show, but you look like a real badass in the pictures.
Yeah, our orders were to secure Baghdad, and this was right in the heart of 2003. We spearheaded from Kuwait right over the sand berm into Iraq. I got to Iraq when I was 20, spent 14 consecutive months in Iraq, straight combat, day in, day out, being field artillery. We have one job, and that's to seek and destroy the enemy.
How do you train for that? I don't want to deviate too much, but how do you you go, okay, I'm going to go in, right. And then you go in and you decide, all right, I'm going to be combat artillery, is that what you said?
Yeah.
So, and then how do you go, okay, well, now I'm going to train for that. How do they get you ready?
Well, I was fortunate enough to have a set of drill sergeants who were from the old school Army, that nitty-gritty set of guys, and during basic training, I remember them saying to us, train like you fight, or like you're going to fight because you're going to war. So it was understood at basic training to really accept the training, take it to heart. So when it was time to enter the theater of combat, psychologically and mentally, I was locked in and ready to do my job.
Because that's life or death. You can't,
yes.
There's no margin of error, really.
Nope.
That.
There's no timeouts over there. There's no,
right.
Give me a minute. I'm out of breath.
Yeah, there's a server here who his job is all about the mines.
Right.
And so he's like, we're on 24/7. You can't even make an inch worth of mistakes, or it could make a difference of life or death. And so that's got to be a lot of stress. So you go through, you fight the war, and then what happens? You get discharged. You go ahead and you leave.
Right.
And then was that a choice that you decided, hey, it's time for me to get out. I've served my time, and I want to be more with my family. Is that what the decision-making process was?
The idea for me when I joined the military was to become a Green Beret to go Special Forces, which is the elite group that the Army has. And downrange is what we call it in Iraq. They offered me the option to extend my career, which was my initial enlistment was 3 years, just 3 years active duty, and then from there pivot to what I wanted to do. So downrange, they offered me to become a Green Beret and essentially have my dream job. They offered me station of choice, which I chose Hawaii. However, turning 21 and 22 consecutively, having survived everything that I survived out there, I had a very, very personal conversation, with God on the battlefield, and I understood at that point that if I was to survive that deployment and come back, my luck may not, be in my favor. So I actually made a promise to God. I said, if you let me live the rest of this deployment, I will do good in this world, and I will work as hard as I can at whatever it is I'm meant to do in life. And so I went up to my retention officer and I said, unfortunately, I've decided to fulfill my 3-year enlistment and I'm going to get out because I was 22. And so I said to myself, I want to have a family one day.
Right.
I want to travel the world. I have all these aspirations, and also just surviving everything.
To say you had seen more horror than most people could ever imagine in their lifetime by the age of 22.
Yeah, it was very, and that's the thing with combat. You don't have time to sit there and cry about it or get into your emotions, because having emotion in combat could really cost you your life. And so I got out in the winter of 2005. January 2005 was my official, end date.
And then you got out, and everything was a magical dream.
Yeah. So I.
It was not, obviously.
No, definitely not. I really, I came home and I realized I had no emotion left. I had to fake the excitement to even be home.
Is that because you had to squash it so much over there, so you're having to keep it in because you can't emote over there because it can be disastrous for what you're trying to accomplish? And so did you have to relearn how to be emotional? Is that?
Yeah, what combat does to you, it drains you of any emotion, really. So when you come back home, you have no identity. You identify with the person you became in Iraq, or for me, when I was in Iraq, and I use an analogy and that I say you can't remove a lion from the jungle. Take a lion out of the jungle, he's going to die. And essentially, when we're out there, we become,
because that became your comfort zone. I've talked to a lot of vets that come back, and they actually, even though it was so tough and hard, when they get here, they don't know how to assimilate into civilian life. They actually feel more comfortable, even though it's life and death, over there.
That's exactly what it is. We're lost. We have no sense of direction. If you take a soldier who's been accustomed to just fighting every day, if not threatening to be killed, actually, unfortunately, dealing, death. And so when you come back to general, life here in the United States, you don't know what to do.
Right. And there is no real training for that. You come back, you're discharged. So what happens? So you come back, you're trying to figure out your way, you're trying to figure out how to emote again, and then you discover that you believe you've got PTSD, or you're diagnosed with it. So tell them what PTSD is, talk a little bit about it, because you actually utilize that as a platform for Jose Belen Speaks, which we'll get to in a bit. But it wasn't always that easy. It's still not easy. But you didn't really know what you were feeling at the time.
I had, it was at the urging of my family to actually go get help. They noticed immediately, within the first few weeks, that there was something wrong with me. I was in extreme denial. There's nothing wrong with me. I'm okay. But I said, you know what, I'll go to the VA. And the VA put me through the first set of questions and, what they do, the process. And they said to me at 23 years old, you have something that used to be called shell shock.
Right,
Which now
I've forgotten about that.
Shell shock, and that was the first time I heard the 4 letters PTSD. This was in 2005, 23 years old, and I said, well, what the heck is that? I said, well, unfortunately, it's called post-traumatic stress disorder. Veterans who, encounter combat come home with that. And unfortunately, you have a set list of limitations. You'll be, within society, you won't really excel, perhaps, as most. You'll be essentially socially awkward, perhaps. All these things, and I'm just looking at it and said, no way. They said, here are these pills, to try to.
So at that point, do they give? So they basically set you up, and I believe they're probably trying to do the right thing to set the expectation, but they're pretty much setting you up to go, okay, well, if you try to step outside this, you're going to experience that, or it kind of sets you up almost to be not a failure, but to have issues with everything that you deal with. Because they set the parameters.
Well, unfortunately, there's, by the VA standard, there's really not much they can do. Their PTSD protocol is actually dated back to the early 80s, mid-80s. The way they treat combat PTSD, so for them, they were doing the best that they could for you. But it's like, well, here's some therapy classes, here's some medications, and this is what you're going to have to face for the rest of your life. And it was pretty mortifying.
What does that do for a 23-year-old or 22-year-old psyche? Like, I imagine that's like a blow, and you're like, okay, well, then what am I going to do from here, or am I going to be able to do anything?
Yeah, you're all right. You're going there because you know that there's something, amiss in a way, and when they tell you, yes, there's something amiss, and unfortunately, this is the extent of the help that we have available for you, you really have to go back out once you leave that appointment and figure it out yourself.
Wow. Okay, so it obviously, you've been given this information and diagnosis, and then what happens?
Well,
in your life, for your example, what started to happen?
And early on, developed the suicidal thoughts, the depression, just horrible.
Which is all part of PTSD.
Just a complete part of PTSD. For a lot of veterans, prior to even going to the VA, we're already suicidal, depressed. And so the acceleration of it sucked. When I finally realized that this is life right now, I did everything I could as a man to figure out my own way.
Sure.
I decided to go to work. Did the best job that I could. I worked a 40-hour-a-week job between Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and got my real estate license. Had a fairly brief but successful real estate career in upstate New York. But again, suicide, depression.
Because that's always in the back of your mind at that point. And so you're trying to figure out how to lead a normal life, but you're dealing with all the demons, for lack of a better word, in the background. So when did you what was the turning point, or what was the crux, or what was bottom? Whatever you want, whatever you feel comfortable talking about, share with them, because I think there's I see a lot of veterans actually who have joined us that I personally know. So I think if whatever you can share, please feel free to share.
It was about 2 years after, 2007, I was at my lowest point in upstate New York, and I reached out to a friend who lived in Orlando, and I said, listen, I have to get out of this environment. I knew I need to make a change. I took the little bit of cash I had about $600. I packed my Infinity up with a little bit of clothes I had. I drove 23 and a half hours, September 11, 2007 here. Had no idea what I was going to do. Took a job transfer. At least I drive an hour from Orlando to Winter Haven to work every day. And at that point, I was introduced to the insurance industry. I was referred to American International Group, AIG, in Lake Mary. I knew that I wanted to be somewhere. I knew that I had this passion to just get somewhere that going back to that promise, that
Right.
I made to myself.
You didn't know the vehicle yet, but you knew you had the
I knew I
passion.
had to do something, and when AIG gave me the job, I actually begged them for the job. Essentially, I said, "Please give me this job. I promise you, I will be your top producer one day." And that's pretty much what happened.
You have a lot of love coming on. There's a lot of veterans that
Thank
are
you.
sending you tons of love
Thanks.
and thanking you for sharing your story.
Absolutely.
So you get the insurance. You're doing fantastic in it. That doesn't necessarily take away everything that you're dealing with.
No, unfortunately, when I speak to people one-on-one or give speeches now, I try to let folks understand that the things that plague you when you don't have success and when you don't have money, they plague you when you have success and when you have money.
Right.
Because
That's a great point.
I did rise to the top of the insurance industry. I was one of the top insurance professionals for 10 years, making high six figures, had combined income with my wife of over $250,000. But the reality is, over those 10 years, I'd go home and contemplate suicide. I had a home office. I worked from home for a period of time, and the raw reality of it was that suicide, it just got to the point where I couldn't deal with the psychological pressures and the torture, essentially, that you go through. A soldier fights a war down there, but when we come home, we have I call it psychological warfare.
Sure.
We're in a battle within our own mind every day.
And I think, just to stress what you said, because I think it's so important, a lot of people, especially in the social media days now, they look at the stuff that gets put on social media, and everybody looks like they're riding high, everything's fantastic, there's all these beautiful things going on, but you and Danielle, you all are making $250,000, and you are still going home, and you are completely 100% not in a good place. And I think that people need to hear that, but I think people go, what is wrong with me? I'm making all this money, I look outwardly successful, and yet I'm still having all of these feelings, these doubts, and that's what, in your case, PTSD has created for you, or tried to create for you. So you're successful making $250 a year, and then at some point you go, this is just, I've got to make a change.
Well, I understood that there's a fundamental epidemic happening within our community, our veteran community, which is the 22 suicides a day.
Which is so heartbreaking.
Which unfortunately is a raw reality, and I realized that no one's paying attention. Society as a whole doesn't even know. I meet people every day, when I speak or when I interact with folks, they have no idea. The general public really has no idea that there's over 8,000 veterans a year committing suicide.
Well, they've seen some of them on social media. Have seen the push-ups.
Right.
It's the closest that anybody's gotten, and God bless whoever actually came up with that, because it's as close to the ALS water challenge that you could get. And people took it very seriously, and it did bring something to the forefront, but not far enough.
Well, that's actually what really furthered my inspiration to, call to action. There has to be change. Something has to happen, for this to stop. And so my wife and I sat down, through all our, tumultuous times and all the pain, and said, we're going to resign from corporate America and do whatever we have to do to help end veteran suicide.
Wow. And so Danielle's definitely, his wife, is a very strong woman and a wonderful partner to have, because that takes a lot. It's a toll on you, but she's having to. And a lot of times those dealing with PTSD, their spouses or significant others, are having to carry a lot of load that you don't always see. And so Danielle has her own load that she's carrying on top of trying to be as supportive of you as she possibly could be. And I think that that's a huge challenge too.
Absolutely.
So you get to a point and you decide, all right, I'm out of corporate America, now what am I going to do?
Entrepreneurship.
So entrepreneurship is awesome, but then what do you do? I like that, veteranpreneurship. What do you do though? How do you decide? You go, okay, so my passion is, I've got this thing, I made this promise to God,
right,
and then I'm going to figure out how to help people, yet I still have to support my family. And that's one thing that a lot of people come on the show or they talk about, well, I don't want to talk about the business side of things. I think it's so important to talk about the business side because you can be as charitable as you want, but if you're not taking care of your own family, you're not doing anybody any good service. So you're trying to find a balance on that, and that's sort of where Jose Belen Speaks came from. So talk a little bit about that.
Jose Belen Speaks is the vehicle that we're using to raise not only the awareness but the acknowledgement that this is a major issue. The veteran suicide epidemic is something that cannot and should not ever be ignored. So what I did, I started speaking at any venue in Orlando that would even give me 5 minutes of their time to say, hey, you know, my name is Jose Belen, this is my story, and this is what's happening within the veteran community right now. And I started to realize that I was becoming the voice of the voiceless.
Right.
You know, that there's so many veterans that are out there that no one can hear because they're not in a position where they can even have social media or can have someone pay attention with influence. So Jose Belen Speaks has grown into this monster of a following now that I'm blessed enough to have been featured on Fox 35 here in Orlando, national news articles. I travel the country and the world now bringing this message up because we cannot and should not be denied, and ultimately the further the speaking platforms from my organization grows, the more powerful the message and higher up the chain.
Absolutely. So, because what you're doing is you're bringing, and Eileen brings up Eileen Winfrey, who's on the show. There's a whole bunch of vets on this show. So, Eileen Winfrey is a veteran. She said, Operation Iraqi Freedom and Enduring Freedom, about 11 to 20 out of every 100 veterans, or between an 11 and 20% who served in OIF or OEF have PTSD in a given year. And I think that what you're doing is, so you're giving them a vehicle, you're giving them a voice, which is also helping you, which is a wonderful thing, because that's cathartic in and of itself. But you're also taking it and also bringing it to the business community who might say, I'm not a veteran, I have no idea what PTSD is, and I would have no interest in even understanding what it is. But that's not true, and tell them why.
Yeah, PTSD affects all of us. I am not shy to say that. I believe most of society has an element of PTSD. You can have PTSD, for example, Hurricane Irma, natural disasters can cause PTSD, car accidents, sexual assault, abuse as a child, things of that nature. So when I speak to business owners to consult with them, I explain PTSD has a letter within there, which is the S, which is stress.
Right.
And
so important.
How many of us are not stressed out, on a daily basis? So I speak to individuals who also, have PTSD, business owners from other.
Well, look at the workplace violence, which I had Dave Benson on, who's a workplace violence expert. And just the workplace violence, you see these people going back in, they're stressed out to the max, something triggered them, and triggers are what me personally, I have PTSD. Mine's from childhood trauma. And so there are triggers, though, but I've learned how to figure out how to handle those better as I've gotten older. But what if you don't have that? What if you don't have that ability? Or what if you're a boss of a place and you don't know that person you just fired because you don't know the signs has PTSD, and they're the ones that come back with the gun or the machete. And so talk a little bit about that, giving the business owners, empowering them to see the signs is so critical.
Yeah, it's very important. The 10 years I spent in corporate America, not once did senior management ever know that I had PTSD. And so it's so important for business owners to understand that when a veteran comes on board, or anyone that has PTSD, they're not trying to be hard to get along with.
Correct.
They're not trying to be a difficult employee. They're just in a sea, day in and day out, lost.
And they haven't been taught any coping skills on how to deal with what they're experiencing. And a lot of them haven't even been diagnosed with it, so they don't even know what it is that they're feeling.
That's why within corporate America or any business entity, it's very important for ownership or leadership to sit down with employees one-on-one, and it can be discussed if the employee is okay with it, but really take a minute to get to know the person. Get to know, rather than just look at the employee as, well, he's my top sales guy. Let's see what Charles has going on in his life. What's Charles' background? Because what will happen is we'll feel a sense of care that we sometimes don't even give ourselves, right? So if our employer is sitting down with us and actually taking the time to get to know me, that'll actually perhaps change my outlook at work and turn it into a positive place for me to go to.
That's fantastic advice.
And watch this employee's production numbers change, because they feel that their leadership really has their best interest at heart and is not looking at them as just a number.
So that's beautiful. That we definitely, I'll repeat that when we repost. Sharon Miller just came on. She said, Jose, thank you so much for telling your story. Every year I walk with the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention in Atlanta in memory of my stepson. Every year a veteran speaks about PTSD in veterans and non-veterans. You're definitely helping to end the silence.
Amen.
So that's what you're doing, but you also need to support your family. You need to. This is also a business, but a business that's got passion behind it.
Yes.
We talk a lot about on the show, and this is episode 25, by the way, people. Thank you guys so much. Never thought we'd get to 25. But you have the passion. We talk about that you've got to have a passion for what you're doing, and you've taken that to the nth degree. You've taken not only a passion, but something you're dealing with.
Yes.
You're like, okay, I'm going to take that, and I'm going to figure out how to help other people and create a business out of it.
Right.
So the speaking engagements, it's not like he's going and speaking to every single, although he could, military event that there is. You really want to build the business and educate the public, the community, not just on the veteran side, but on the business side as well.
On both sides, it's very important, for the message to come out. But on the business side, the way I look at it, from the speaking side of things, we're helping each other out, because I'm able to educate, business owners, entrepreneurs, just like myself as well, and also by helping that community and them accepting me, propelling my speaking is also strengthening the message. So when I'm able to obtain a consulting opportunity or a speaking engagement, it's multifaceted, because
Absolutely.
I'm helping educate the listeners, but you're also helping my platform grow.
So, believe it or not, we're almost at 1:30. So let's talk about a couple of things.
Sure.
You've got a website or a Facebook page.
Yes.
And we will post this, but tell them what that is.
Okay, so I have two websites. I have gobeyondptsd.org, which is our nonprofit that we're building. My wife and I are building our nonprofit. And then we have JoseBelenSpeaks.com. Those websites will give you full detail on our services on both sides, the nonprofit and also the speaking side. And then I have a Facebook page, which is Jose Belen Speaks for the 22. It's very important that you put for the 22. And I also have a public Facebook page, is Jose Belen.
And his Instagram is also Jose Belen Speaks for the 22. I only know that because I had to use that when I was trying to post today. You're a joy and such an inspiration. I think that you have definitely impacted people and will continue to do that. Appreciate you being brave enough to share that, because I think vulnerability is so important for people to see, so that they go, all right, well, if he's saying it and he's feeling it and he's not stigmatized by it, then I can say it and I can feel it and I can talk about it. So you're awesome. Thank you so much, my friend.
One last
Yes, please.
If you're watching this and you yourself have PTSD, or you have someone near and dear to you, or a friend that has PTSD, the most important thing for me that's helped me, and that I want to always pass on to everyone, is to say, you know what, I have PTSD, but PTSD doesn't have me.
I love that.
Let's remove the stigma. Don't be ashamed to have PTSD. I'm not ashamed to say I have PTSD. And by furthering that message, we can all help each other. Okay? So if you have PTSD, take a look in the mirror and say, you know what, I have PTSD, but it doesn't have me.
I love that. I have PTSD, but it doesn't have me.
Amen.
Love you guys. Love Danielle. Appreciate you coming on. Thank you guys for joining us. Lots of fantastic comments, which we will get to. And then this is the part of the show. Thank you for all the love and support. Now I'm going to hit the close button and do all that good stuff so Jose doesn't have to get up and do it. Love you. See you tomorrow. Appreciate you guys.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.